Hey, everybody, and welcome to our final day together here in the online Art Biz Bootcamp. I am so excited to have y'all here and looking forward to sharing with y'all the last stages in the development of your promotion. Quick refresher on what we covered so far. So what we talked about first on the first day was your audience, your perfect clients. And this is that Venn diagram that I drew. I fancy pantsed it up. So it's got a little color on here, and I think it's a little bit easier to see. So the very first part of it is looking at what you love, then what they love, what you have the skills for, and what they can pay for. The intersection of that, which is this section right here, is where the sweet spot is. That is where your perfect people are going to be. They're going to be at the overlap of the things you love making, the things you have the skill to do, the things they love, and the things that they can pay for. You've got to have people who can pay for what you're offering. Otherwise, you're not going to have the sales. It's got to line up. It's got to be in alignment. That's why I keep talking about alignment. It's great to have a huge, big audience of 10,000 people, but if they can't afford to purchase what you've got to offer, they're a vanity number and they're not doing you any good. They may be fabulous, fantastic, wonderful people, but they're not ready for what you've got to offer. And then you have two choices. You can back up, go find another audience, or you can create something just for the audience you have. So you want to have that sweet spot set up. And we're going to talk about what to do if you don't have any audience yet at all, what to do if you have some audience, and what to do if you have a bigger audience. So we've got a couple of different scenarios here. So we're going to work through those different scenarios as we go through how to implement. So it depends on where you are in the development of your online business. A lot of people have none yet, and that is a great spot to be. It means you can build it up the right way from the very beginning. So we want that sweet spot, and we're going to talk about how to find the people that fit that. Your audience, where we're looking for them, remember, we're prospecting, just like prospecting for gold. We're out there looking for the people we want to date. Remember, I've used that dating analogy a lot. And the reason I like it so much is it really talks about building relationship. So we're going to go hang out where, first of all, where our potential perfect people are. There are a lot of other people there too, but we need to go where they hang out. And the way to do that, the easiest way to do that, the fastest way to do that we've talked about is Facebook groups and looking at Facebook pages. So we talked about identifying 5 Facebook pages, identifying 5 Facebook groups, follow the pages, and join the groups. You can join the groups as your Facebook profile, that's your personal profile, or as your Facebook page. Whatever you do, though, you are not promoting in those groups. Remember how much I emphasized that yesterday. You cannot promote inside other people's groups. It's bad form, it's not the done thing, and it'll make you big enemies around the world. So don't do that. We're going to talk about how you move them from the Facebook group into your customer journey. But this is where you start the dating process. You're going to start talking to people. Any of y'all have teenagers, you remember they have that whole lexicon of the difference between just meeting somebody, dating them, and then we get to the stage when they're older where they're going to marry them. So we're going to meet them first, and we're going to start talking to them. We do all of that inside the Facebook group. That's where those perfect people hang out. And the bigger pocket that we're looking in those groups, we're looking for groups that are in alignment with the culture of our perfect people, the bigger context of our perfect people. And remember the analogy I used, or the example I used, is my own, that I paint landscapes I paint the southern landscape, and wallow literally in Southern culture. So I want to look for Facebook groups that focus on Southern culture or focus on the Southern landscape, not painting groups when I'm looking for collectors. I'm looking for bigger context. You're going to look for painting groups if you're trying to promote a course or a workshop. But if you're looking for collectors, look for that bigger tribe, and your perfect people are in that tribe. So we're looking for the bigger tribe. One of the tribes that I identified was Garden and Gun. Another one would be Southern Living Magazine. So magazines are a really easy way to find some pages, but it's not just those pages. It could also be Facebook groups around conservation for me, or around environmental issues. So there's some conservation groups that I belong to that have to do with supporting places that I paint. Gives me really great access to my perfect people. But remember, I'm going to caution you again, no promoting inside groups. That is big, bad, no, no, no. Steve says, how in the world did you find Garden and Gun? I never would have found that on my own, but I love them. They are originated in the state I'm from. They originated in my area, Steve. They've been around a good while. And so I've known about them for a long time. So I actually subscribe to the magazine and have for years and years and years and years. So they're a Charleston fixture, low country fixture. So you just need to think about the kind of places where your perfect people would congregate. What's their bigger tribe, their bigger culture? So if you are painting dog portraits, for example, as I know some of y'all are, then the bigger culture, the bigger tribe would be dog lovers, people who love dogs. If you photograph or paint horses, so Peggy Erickson photographs horses. So her bigger tribe, horse lovers, and she can look for groups that focus on horses. Some really great groups would be anything around the American Quarter Horse Association, anything around the dressage organizations. All of those would be great Facebook groups for her to join. So she paints, photographs horses, but she wants to find tribes where horse lovers hang out. So that's why that people who love whatever it is you're doing is so important, because that's where you're going to find your tribe. So we focused on looking at how you can do that. Then you're going to take, after you hang in those Facebook groups and those pages for a while, you're going to start taking what you learn there and put it onto your empathy map. And remember, the quadrants are about what your ideal client says, what they do, what they believe, and what they feel. And we talked about those things yesterday and plopped some general stuff in there. But that helps you in writing your full niche statement, your promise statement. And it also helps you in writing your content for your promotion. So you take what you learn by hanging out in those Facebook groups, by following those Facebook pages, following any influencers you find in that bigger tribe, and you plug it into the empathy map. That's where you put your notes. Remember, I said it's great to have a big one, like on a whiteboard or on a big piece of poster board, and use Post-it notes to stick into those 4 quadrants. Then we created your full niche promise statement yesterday. So we came together with all of the pieces, and we used the empathy map to create that. So you want to make sure you have that done. It's a big part of helping you write your content. Then we created your perfect offer yesterday. We talked about the parts that go into making an offer. And remember that your product is just one part of your offer. Your product would be your paintings. Your product could be note cards. Your product could be reproductions. Your product could be merch that has your images on there. Your product could be a workshop that you're going to do online. It could be a class online. It could be a course online. But your product is the thing, and the rest of the offer is how you're going to package it. We talked about some bonuses that you could offer, things like free shipping, an extra PDF or lesson if you're doing a workshop or a course, something that's going to be helpful for them in their learning process. We talked about a bunch of different bonus options, so make sure you review that. We talked about price and positioning yourself, that you're not going to be the Walmart of the world, and you're not quite ready yet to be Bonwit Teller, but you're fine being World Market or Macy's, that you want to go somewhere in the middle. And we talked about some ways to figure out your pricing in general. And we talked about payment terms. That means you need to make it really clear how they're going to pay you. And we're talking about the easiest way to do that being having a PayPal business account and using an invoice that is sent to them via a link in email. And you can have your payment terms include cash, credit, check, PayPal, any of those options, but that PayPal is a very trusted vehicle payment gateway that a lot of people are familiar with. So if you have another way to take money like SquareUp or Stripe or something like that, that's fine. But at the very basic level, you want to have PayPal. And it's not your personal one, you need a business one. Payment terms are super important, and they lead into the guarantee, which is risk reversal. You're trying to make it easy for them to trust that this is going to work out okay, because it takes a lot of trust for people to buy online. And people are much more comfortable doing it than they used to be. People pay money, big money, for art online. So you shouldn't be afraid to offer a bigger painting. But you need to make sure you establish trust in order to do that. You're going to establish that in the relationship you're building with them, from the initial posts that you make in those groups to the content that you send to them. But you also want to make it very easy for them to make a purchase, knowing that they're not going to be stuck with something. So you want to offer some sort of refund policy. You want to offer some sort of guarantee. You want to answer questions that they might have, objections that they might have. Like, what do I do if it gets here and it's the wrong size? What do I do if it gets here and it's the wrong color? What do I do if it's not what I thought it was going to be? Answer that ahead of time and people will be much more comfortable buying. So that's the offer. And it follows along the customer journey. So customers, you don't want to just meet somebody on the first date and say, hey, I like the way you look, marry me. That doesn't work out super well. So we are going to cultivate a relationship, and that's called the customer journey. And that relationship goes from their initial meeting you, to finding your product online, to deciding whether to buy the product or not, to buying the product, to experiencing the brand and becoming a loyal customer, a true fan, so that they will bring in other true fans to you and you can sell to them again, because it's way easier to sell to someone who's already purchased than somebody who's never heard of you before. So we're going to talk about how you're going to use content to bring them along that customer journey path. So that was what we covered in those first 2 days: your audience, your offer, and now we're into the promotion. So the overview of it is, we're going to take that customer journey and we're going to pull people from where they are on Facebook. So this pocket of people right here, that's a Facebook group. So we're going to go to those Facebook groups that y'all joined, and we're going to pull them along to become your buyers. So this is a journey. This is the customer journey. And remember the parts of the customer journey. Right in here, we're looking for people to date. We're looking for the people who might be our perfect people. And the way that we're going to get started in getting to know them is that we're going to share. We're going to participate in that group. We're going to be active members. We're going to post and we're going to ask questions, and we are going to be good citizens in those groups. We're not going to say, join my email list. We're not going to say follow my Facebook page. We're not going to say private message me. We're not going to do any of that stuff because that's promotional and you'll get kicked out. So we start on Facebook because that's the simplest and most easy way to do it. You've got to have at least a Facebook personal profile. You can do the whole system with just a personal profile, but you got to have that. It's the only way to get started if you don't have an email list and you don't have any followers on Facebook on your business page or your Instagram business account. So we're starting on Facebook. The whole promotion doesn't live in one place. It moves from place to place. So we're moving people from Facebook into our tribe right here. We want them to go from here all the way down that journey to here. And along the way, we're dating them. Here, we're talking to them. And so you're going to post comments in there about the things about that bigger tribe you love. So if I go into one of those Facebook groups, like, let's see, one I did join. If I go into one of those Facebook groups, like Coastal Living, Georgia Coastal Living, I'm going to share photographs that I've taken on the Georgia coast. I'm going to talk about what I love about the Georgia coast. I'm going to share pictures of Tybee Island Beach and talk about my favorite times to be there. I'm going to talk about why I love to paint it. It's okay to talk about the fact you're a painter and you paint it. In fact, you should be doing that. You're just not going to tell them to go buy your paintings. You're going to answer other people's questions about the places that you love. So if somebody asks a question about Tybee, I'm going to answer it. You see where I'm going with that? I'm going to become an active participant in that group. And I'm going to begin to become a conversation starter in that group. So let me go. I'm going to share here in just a second. Artwork Living. Some of y'all are already members there. So this is my Facebook group that a lot of y'all belong to. So when people make posts in here, you get a designation as being a new member if people have that turned on. And sometimes you'll have people who are conversation starters, people who share a lot in the group, like Jim Morgan. I don't know if Jim's on right now or not, but Jim's a visual storyteller. That means he's active in there. And he shares a lot. And so his posts get a lot of reach because he shared good stuff in there. People have interacted and engaged with his content. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to create engaging content in there and share good posts. So you get Storyteller Designation. It's not something we assign, it's something that Facebook automatically assigns. If you start conversations a lot, you get the conversation starter designation. It means that people engage with what you write a lot. If you share a lot of photos and images that people interact with, then you get visual storyteller. Kind of want that. So you want to share valuable content that people engage with. And if you look back at your empathy map and you think about the things that your people love, you want to engage with the stuff that they care about. So when you look at this Facebook group over here, y'all see how I've got pink and green people? These little circles are people. We're going for the pink people, not the green people. The green people are not our perfect clients. So we want to share content that's going to attract the pink people and not the green people. So for example, in the Georgia Coastal Living group, I'm going to want to attract people, especially who are interested in the actual landscape, the marshes, the beaches, the old rice fields, the state parks, the national parks that are around here. Those are going to be my perfect people. And so I'm going to share content about that. Good question here. Is there a way to post to multiple groups at once, or do you have to post one at a time? You have to post one at a time. And if you post to multiple groups at the same time, and sometimes people do that by copying and pasting, Facebook marks it as spam and you'll get timeout. Ask me how I know that. I did it a few years back. And it was in my own groups, but it doesn't matter. Facebook still counts that as spam. So you need to make your post into different groups at different times. And it's a good idea to tailor your post just a little bit to the group. Otherwise, it's going to get dinged as being just copies and spam. So I don't think you have to go to like 5 or 10 groups. This is something you're going to do for a while. It's ongoing, but you want to concentrate on one group to get started with. I would maybe post to 3 groups and see where people respond, and then focus on the one that people respond in. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of this in just a little while. So pick like 2 or 3 groups to get started in and look for where people respond, and then concentrate on one group. Now, the next part of the customer journey, there are 4 pieces of big content that's important that lead people down that customer journey path. And I have labels for them. I call them certain things because they have functions. They have roles they have to play. And you deliver them in different ways. I'm going to talk about that when we get to the strategy. So right now, I'm not going deep into these. I just want to give you the overview. The overview of those 4 big pieces of content. And these are not necessarily posted in groups. Remember that? We don't promote in groups. The first one is a filter piece of content. And that's where you're going to filter out the green people and you're going to let the pink people pass. So that filter piece of content needs to appeal directly to your perfect people. And it needs to be focused on the things they love and draw them in. And there is no promotion in there. You're not telling them that you've got stuff for sale, and you're not telling them, go buy my stuff. You're not there yet. Now you're at the talking with them phase of dating. The next piece of content is the opportunity. So the OP stands for opportunity. And the opportunity is to have something on those bare walls. And so at the opportunity stage, you're beginning to share with them what particularly you love doing. And you might share a painting with them if you are selling paintings. And you're going to talk about the fact you have a collection of paintings. What's the collection all about? Why did you fall in love with painting that place, etc.? We're going to dive deep into that content later. Third piece of content is the transformation. Remember, transformation is the benefits. We're talking about how they're going to be in a different spot, what the big change is, what's the big difference. And one of the best ways to show the transformation with paintings is to literally show a painting in a room. So show them proof. Show them what the painting would look like in a room. If you've got a photograph of a painting in a client's home, even better. But you're going to show them a mock-up in some way, shape, or form of what a painting would look like in a room, a photograph. And you're going to talk about the before and the after. Teresa did one of the best transformation emails I've ever seen for selling paintings. And she literally did a mock-up that had the room with no art on the wall and the room with the art on the wall. It was phenomenal because people didn't have to imagine it in their heads. They could see it right in front of them. They could see it. You carry that further in the 4th piece of content, that is the ownership experience. That is where, It's what it's like to have this in your own space. And because all of these, I'm talking about delivering them one-to-one. Those 4 pieces of content are one-to-one. Now you can take this basic idea and you can apply it to an email list if you've got one. But for a fast promotion, talk about one-to-one. For that one-to-one ownership experience, you can even ask them to send you a photo after the transformation content of the space they're thinking about, and you can show them what that painting would look like in their space. So they get a feeling of what it would be like for them in particular to own that piece of artwork. And then you issue the invitation at the end of that email. Those who accept the invitation become buyers. So it goes from Facebook group, filter content, opportunity content, transformation content, to that ownership experience, the experience of actually owning it. So you're getting more and more and more and more specific each time. So I'm going to tell you the actual nuts and bolts of implementations. I want you to understand the process and the strategy first before we talk about the how-tos. So don't worry about the how-tos yet. I'm going to tell you how to, but I want you to understand the process, the journey. They go from being a mixed group of people who are your perfect people and lots of other kind of people in the bigger tribe. Then you begin to filter them out with a piece of filter content. They come to the next piece of content. You invite them to the next piece of content. You send it to them, and it talks about the opportunity. And you're going to talk about the collection as a whole, or the workshop as a whole, and what that workshop can do for people. That third piece of content is how this thing that you're offering is going to change them. And you're going to talk about the benefits. And you can answer objections they might have, but it's the transformation, how that thing is going to change their lives. Having art on the wall is going to fill the room with light. Having a workshop online is going to eliminate boredom. You're going to talk about how it's going to transform their lives. The last piece of content is you're going to give them a taste of what it's like. So if you're selling artwork, it's really great if you can get an image of their actual space and you pop the artwork into that space. So you see how it goes from general to specific. At the very end of the ownership one, you invite them to purchase. You tell them how they can purchase. So that's what that ownership box is. That's the overview of the process. And we're going to talk about some of the particulars of that right here. So I want you to understand that there are 2 separate pieces to this. You have a delivery system. You're going to have something that's going to send the messages. And then you've got the content that's in the messages. So you've got the delivery system and you've got the content. And there are so many different delivery systems that you can use. And the easiest one to get started with is going to be Facebook Messenger. It can be your personal email address, whichever one you're comfortable with. You're going to need to use Messenger a little bit to get going with, probably, but you can use just Messenger. You can use just your personal email address. If you really love living on Instagram, you can use Instagram DM if you want to. I'm going to talk about those particular delivery systems in just a second. We'll outline all of the options that you've got there. Then you're going to write 4 pieces, big pieces of content that go through that structure that I just talked about. Filter content, then you're going to talk about the opportunity, you're going to talk about the transformation, and the chance to have the experience of owning it. And at the end of that is the invitation. So it's not that hard. Also going to show you my favorite trick for writing that content. And I have some samples for you. So you're going to get some idea of how I've done it in the past myself. So I'm going to show you some stuff that you can use. Now, when I give you those, what we call swipe files, do not copy it word for word, because what I did is not going to apply to you necessarily. It's the framework. I want you to see how I did it so that you can model your messages on the ones that I used. But because I'm talking to people, and the ones that I'm going to be talking about, who love the coast of South Carolina and Georgia, the low country, that may not be your perfect people. And if you copy mine word for word, it ain't going to work. You've got to use that as a model and then plug in your stuff from your promise statement. So you'll have something to go by, and it's not going to be super hard to write. And I want you to remember that when you're writing, there's 5 things you've got to appeal to. The senses. And yes, these are 4 separate pieces of content. They become either messages or emails or DMs or private messages, but they're going to be separately sent, at least a day apart, to your perfect people, one-to-one. So yeah, I want you to sell one-to-one to get started. If you don't have a list, if you've got a list, you can send it to multiple people. But those 4 pieces of content, you want to do writing that's going to paint the picture in their minds. You want to use 1 image per email, and you want to appeal to their senses, because the senses are the way to the emotions. They're the gateway to the emotions. But the 2 things, you got to have that delivery system. There are all kinds of ways you can do it. And you got to have the content. There are all kinds of ways you can deliver the message, the content.